The importance of self-talk and affirmation comes in programming our subconscious. And 90% of the mind is our subconscious, of which we have no awareness, but it is there. And the same happens to our attitudes. Now, where did this come from? The subconscious has been programmed like that. What is programming the subconscious? Our conscious inputs. So, what is important is that with the conscious mind, if we can program our subconscious with positivity, with affirmations.
This is episode number 102 of The Inspiring Talk with Swami Mukundananda. Welcome back inside yet another episode of The Inspiring Talk. My name is Vijay Gautam. I'm your host for this show. Each week, I interview today's most successful and inspiring personalities to help you realize your inner potential. I'm really excited for my guest, Swami Mukundananda. He is a world-renowned teacher of spirituality, yoga, and meditation. He's the founder of the yogic system called JKYog, also known as yoga for the body, mind, and soul. He is someone who went to IIT and IIM and had a promising corporate career, but that did not quench his thirst for knowing the absolute truth. He renounced his career and traveled throughout India as a sanyasi, learning about the various religious traditions and schools of philosophy in India. Swami Mukundananda has inspired people all over the world on the path of spirituality, holistic health, yoga, meditation, and service to society. He has come up with a new book titled The Science of Mind Management, where he shares how you can win the inner battle of your mind and achieve success in life. In this episode, we discuss the science of mind management and how to manage negative thoughts. We dive deep into spirituality and talk about how to balance material and spiritual world, how to find the ultimate happiness in your life, how do you delay gratification, and a lot more. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Let's get started. Welcome, guys, inside yet another episode of the Inspiring Talk podcast. I am excited and honored to be joined by Swami Mukundananda ji today. Swami ji, thank you for joining me on the show.
Namaste, Vijay Gautam ji. It's my pleasure to be with you on your show.
Great. So, Swamiji, you have been on this spiritual path for so long, and you have written several books in the past, and your new book coming up out there on the science of mind management. I want to jump straight with the question about thought. We have these constant streams of thought that we are going throughout the day. And especially with the time that we are in right now, a lot of people that I come across, the question that they ask me is, Vijay, how do I take care of my negative thoughts? And I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this podcast do have the same kind of thing that, you know what, number one, is it okay to have negative thoughts? And number two, how do I take care of my negative thoughts?
Yes, Vijay, thoughts are so important. We try and adjust the externals in the hope that they will give us happiness. But we don't realize it is not objects or situations, but the thoughts that we are harboring within ourselves that are responsible for both happiness and distress. That is why the philosopher Mills had expressed it so nicely when he said the mind is a place of its own and in itself can make heaven out of hell and hell out of heaven. So thoughts can make us happy and thoughts can make us sad. Not only that, thoughts are the seeds for the actions that we perform. We all wish to improve our work, our activities, but it all begins from the seed of that action, which is the thought within. Now, when we think about improving our thoughts, we will realize that the whole of creation is striving to help us improve the quality of our mind. And circumstances are not coming in our life without a reason. They are exposing our negative thoughts to us and providing us opportunities to overcome ourselves, to lift ourselves up. That is why let us say that someone has this defect of angry thoughts within. Creation will keep providing situations for the eruption of anger to make that person realize that this defect, I need to address it. Now, that person may say, my neighbor is bad, and he shifts his neighborhood, but he gets a similar neighbor there as well. And finally, when he addresses the angry thoughts within, he finds that those obnoxious neighbors have disappeared. So creation was striving to help this person overcome a particular defect at that time. Now, when that was overcome, now the next defect is going to be addressed. In this way, we are factually, from a spiritual perspective, where our mind is. We are as elevated as our mind. And that is why this mind is said to be the cause of bondage and the cause of liberation. So, the importance of improving the quality of our thoughts and mind is paramount in our life. Why negative thoughts are arising is we have not trained our mind. We have
Mm.
trained ourselves in physical activities. We have established a whole lot of habits and created so many skills, but we have not realized that training the mind is such a vital aspect of life. Very often, when I go to MBA colleges, I tell the students there, you are learning how to manage personnel, finances, machines, marketing environments, but have you learned to manage your own mind? If not, it is going to hamper your effectivity as a manager. And that is why
Mhm.
manager start off by managing your own mind. So we need it's this management of the mind is also a science, like so many other sciences. Spirituality is not some kind of hocus pocus that is disconnected from our lives. The material science is helping us understand external creation and how to harness it for our comfort and benefit. And there is
Mm.
a spiritual science that enables us to understand our inner resources, the mind and the intellect, and to harness them to manifest the divinity within ourselves. That is the importance of managing and improving our thoughts and mind.
Yeah, I totally agree in the fact that you mentioned that, the more you think about certain thing and you are attracting the similar kind of, the example of neighbors that you gave, right? And also, in a way, you are attracting the same kind of vibe on what's going on your mind, right? So now you mentioned about you got to train your mind for the positive thoughts, right? So can you share on what are the some ways people can train their minds to think positive thought? Let's say somebody is having a series of negative thoughts without realizing that I'm having a lot of negative thoughts. And how do we, is there any switch that, mental switch that you can use or any tools that you can recommend? Like it's now you are hitting that switch, mental switch, and then now you start thinking more positive thoughts. Is there anything like that? Or is there any way that people can do?
Yes, definitely. Very often we think that our mind is not under our control. We think. Oh, this defect is there within me and I'm not able to handle my thoughts. However, we don't realize that all of us have the inherent ability to control our mind in a moment if we so decide. For example, does anybody ever shout at his or her boss? They don't.
Mm.
No matter how much the boss troubles a person, the intellect tells the mind, no, keep your anger under control. If you went here, you're going to lose your job. So the moment the
Mm.
intellect realizes that anger is harmful to me, it controls the mind. That person doesn't speak up to the boss. He goes and vents his fury upon his subordinate. The subordinate keeps on listening, yes, sir, yes, sir. He goes home and vents it at his wife. The wife listens and she becomes angry at the child. So anger is flowing downwards always. What is the reason for that? The intellect has decided that to be angry here is dangerous for me. Let me give you another example. A little child complains that I don't want to study. His
Mm.
parents come to me, Swamiji, my child doesn't study, what to do? I ask him, what's the matter? He says, Uncle, my mind doesn't remain in studies. It's a big problem. The mind does not like to study. But the same child goes in his year end exam, and for 2 hours, he brings his mind into razor sharp focus and then goes on answering the questions in front of him. Where did this control come from? It was the higher self which controlled the lower self. So this mind is
Mm.
partitioned into two, the mind and the intellect. That intellect is endowed with the ability to control the mind if only it decides. Why is it that we are permitting ourselves the luxury of negative thoughts? Because we don't realize how harmful they are. We say, it gives me pleasure to indulge in all this negativity. It's a kind of masochistic pleasure, but nevertheless, it is so nice to think about how terrible the situation is, etc. And the day the intellect becomes convinced, such thoughts are harmful to me. Such thoughts will serve no purpose. We will find like a switch, suddenly that mind has become controllable. Not 100%,
So,
but to some extent, yes.
yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but so when we say intellect knows that this thought is harmful, are we talking about awareness here?
It is the conviction of the intellect, the understanding or the knowledge, not merely theoretical knowledge, but realized knowledge based on beliefs. So you see,
Mm.
this is where the importance of beliefs comes in our life. Beliefs are practically the guideposts that are guiding us in our journey of life. Somebody has developed the belief that money is the most important thing, and his whole life is veering in the direction of money. Somebody else developed the belief that to cultivate my inner wealth is the most important, and that person is reading and receiving such inspirational literature and talks to improve from within. So these beliefs are what? They are the decisions in our intellect that we hold. So that faith is such an important thing in our life. If the intellect becomes convinced that these negative thoughts are bad, it will control the mind. Awareness is another aspect which is also required.
So what we are saying is awareness is different thing, and the knowledge of intellect is different thing, right? So awareness is being aware that I'm being, let's say, angry, and intellect, with that you mean that if I be angry, then this is going to be the outcome, and this is now a rational mind playing in on your head, right?
Definitely, awareness would come first. Without
Mm.
awareness, there is no scope of improvement. So it all
Mm.
has to start off with awareness. My thoughts are negative. And then will come the next step. What do I do with it? Do I continue or do I change? So awareness is also important, that self introspection, self analysis that enables us to come in touch with our own defects and our own virtues.
So a bit earlier, you mentioned about the desires, right? And also in your book, you talk about how desires, and a lot of these, you call the anger, envy, greed, and desire is manas rog, or mental illness, right? And the core of this originates from the desire, right? The desire to have something in the life, right? So now my question to you is, how does one balance chasing something, but there needs to be something that somebody they want to chase, right? Either they are chasing material thing, or they are we all are chasing something in a way, right? So we are all running after one thing. Then how do you balance, let's say, still living in the world, in the material world, and also being on the spiritual path? How do you balance, make this balance? I know, I mean, you get asked this question often, but and also obviously without being yogi like you are, how can we as a regular people imbibe the spirituality in our life and then balance it with the material world as well?
Okay, desire has been pointed out by all great saints, all the philosophic and religious traditions. Now, in the Buddhist philosophy, it is all built around the elimination of desire. And desire is mentioned as the root of all misery. And why is it expressed in this way? Because when we create a desire, it can have two consequences. Either it is fulfilled or it is obstructed. When it is obstructed, it results in anger. So anger does not come by itself. Anger is the consequence of an obstructed desire. What happens when desire is fulfilled? The moment it is fulfilled, it goes away for a little while and comes back with redoubled intensity. So, fulfillment of desire leads to greed. So, the sacred books and the sacred personalities around the world have told us that if you create these desires, you will get caught between the trap of anger and greed. And the reason we are creating desires is in the hope of happiness. But that happiness keeps on fading further and further and further away. So initially you think, okay, if I become so rich, I'll be happy, a millionaire. But then when you have a million, the desires have increased further. Now you want a billion to be happy. And when you have a billion, then you want to be richer than Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos. So there is
There
no
is no
end.
end.
It is like the mirage that we are chasing. And realizing this, the futility of desires, we wish to give them up. But your question is that we don't want to become yogis and sadhus and living in the world. How do we handle this state, this goal of desirelessness? So, the simple solution is you don't have to eliminate desire, you merely sublimate it. If you had a desire to achieve something, to earn wealth for yourself, now you sublimate it. Let me earn and serve the Lord and humankind with that wealth. So you have replaced a lower desire by a higher desire. Desire per se is not bad. The harmful desires are pulling us down. If we replace it with good desires, the desire to serve, the desire to enhance our knowledge, the desire to improve ourselves from within, these desires are most beneficial. So it is a misconception to think that spirituality means becoming devoid of desires. In fact, the saints have such tremendous yearning for the Supreme and to serve the Supreme
Hmm.
that they're willing to do sacrifice anything for that sake. They were not desireless. And how do we
Hmm.
balance these out practically in our life? This is the principle of karma yoga. So, karma yoga
Hmm.
means you do your karmas and stay in yoga from within. So, everybody is doing their works, everybody has their occupation, their profession. The problem is it's being done in an agitated state of mind. The mind has got anxiety, fear, attachment, greed. Karma Yoga says you don't change anything on the outside. If you are a doctor, you
Hmm.
carry on being a doctor, but change your thoughts, change your consciousness, and change the intention with which you do these actions. That is why in the Bhagavad Gita, before listening to the Gita, Arjun was a warrior. After hearing the whole philosophy of Karma Yoga, he was still doing the same duty. What had changed was his inner consciousness. So, if this is the
Hmm.
principle of Karma Yoga, now who is a yogi? We think somebody who can do chakrasan or who can do mayurasan or the headstand is a yogi. But the Bhagavad Gita tells us, yogina karma kurvanti sangam tyaktvatma shuddhaye. A yogi is one who can do the most intricate kind of works without experiencing the least decrease in equipoise from inside. That yogi may be administering a huge
Hmm.
kingdom. We've had instances of this in the past of Dhruv, Prahlad, Ambarish, etc. in history. They were great kings, and while discharging their worldly duties, internally their minds were calm, peaceful, and connected with the divine. So, this art of Karma Yoga is something that everybody in the world can learn and benefit from.
So, what I hear you say is even if you're doing the thing that you are doing right now, connect that to the higher purpose. See how you can be of service to others. And then, so are we saying that just share, if it's a wealth, then share it with others and do it for the well being of other human being, or, do it goodness for the people on the planet, right? So, connect it with the higher purpose and raise a bit of the consciousness. Is that what you're trying to share?
That is one level of understanding that previously we were doing everything just for our sake, and now we have found a higher purpose.
Hmm.
So our activities are motivated by that passion of a higher purpose. However, it is not just serving others. People serve others just to accumulate name and fame. So the activity is not the point.
Hmm.
The intention behind the activity, the inner thoughts is the important
Hmm.
thing. When we purify our intention, that activity automatically becomes auspicious for everyone, for all of creation. So,
Hmm. Hmm. So
serve
serve
without
without
expectations
expectation.
is 50% of it. So, the expectations were for our happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And now we say, okay, now serve without expectations. Now you've
Hmm.
accomplished half the journey. And then there is a second half as well. The
Hmm.
second half is do everything as an act of service. Please the divine with it. Let me tell you a story to illustrate this point. Can I?
Sure.
Okay, there has been a great, brave, and valiant king in Indian history called Chhatrapati Shivaji. He had a spiritual preceptor, Samartha Ram Das,
Mm-hmm.
who was a renunciant, a sadhu. So Samartha Ramdas once entered his capital and came in front of his palace on the street with the begging bowl in his hand, saying, Bhiksham Dehi, Bhiksham Dehi. Shivaji was standing on his palace veranda and he felt extremely embarrassed that I am the king and my guru is begging on the streets.
Mm.
He was motivated that I need to correct this. He scribbled something on a little piece of paper and ran down and placed that chit in his guru's begging bowl. When Guruji opened it and looked, he smiled. Shivaji had written, "My kingdom and everything that's in it, I am offering it at your feet." So he thought, now my guru will never need to beg again. Gurudev smiled and he said, "Look, my child, I don't beg because I have need. It gives me an opportunity to come in the midst of worldly people and share a few words of wisdom with them. You have given me your whole kingdom. Now do one thing. I am putting it under your custody. Rule it, but with this consciousness. It is not mine. It belongs to my Guru and to God. And do your duty as a service to the divine." So when we start doing our works in this consciousness, I am doing it for the pleasure of the Supreme, for the benefit of humankind. That intention behind our works helps us become a karma yogi.
All right, so that's a lovely story there. So, bit moment back, you mentioned about happiness, and you being someone who have been to IIT, who have been to IIM, and you have taken the corporate roles in your life, and then you left all of that for to find the ultimate truth, thirst of knowing the absolute truth, right? So, and now that it's been years since you have been in this journey of finding this truth, how would you define happiness?
Vijay, the search for happiness is the universal common search of all humankind. We may be doing so many kinds of activities,
Mm,
but behind it all is the pursuit of happiness. And that is why where we decide happiness lies is so important. So, as youngsters, as little children, we felt that happiness means to have pleasure, to enjoy, to be entertained. But then a stage comes when you find that this is not fulfilling enough and you want a deeper kind of satisfaction.
mm,
That deeper satisfaction does not come from the objects of enjoyment. It comes from finding meaning and purpose in our life. And that is where this question why comes up. What is the purpose of my life? So, this is what set me off on this track. As when I was a student at postgraduate, I was doing MBA. And for some reason, maybe past life sanskars or whatever, these questions became so important. What is the purpose of my life? And that set me off in search of the truth. What is the absolute truth? And helped me connect with the Supreme.
mm,
So, to answer your question, is one kind of happiness which you enjoy and it's finished.
mm,
And there is another kind of happiness that you experience within yourself
mm,
as the fulfillment of your soul.
mm,
The first kind of happiness, chasing it pollutes the mind. It kind of drags our consciousness down. And very often it creates a sense of guilt as well. For some unknown reason, we feel guilty. Why did I enjoy this?
mm,
But the other kind of happiness, the inner happiness, there is the more you have it, the more it lifts you up.
mm,
And there is no limit to it. It's like a fountain that is ever increasing.
mhm,
But that is the happiness of our real self. From the spiritual perspective, we are not material personalities. Our
mm,
body is material, but we are spiritual beings and we are having a material experience.
mm,
So that spiritual self, which you can say is the soul or the Atman or from whichever culture or tradition you come, its happiness is also spiritual.
Hmm.
And that spiritual happiness, when we taste it, then we feel that there is nothing as sweet as this.
Hmm.
And that the search for that happiness is what lifts people up to holiness, which helps them dedicate their lives to noble causes and achieve huge things in the service of humankind.
So it really fascinates me. You see, what is it that we want? Like the one thing that we want, and it's happiness, right? Even though, we say maybe the big house or the car or vacation and all of that. And if we really look closer, then we all are, running after happiness. And here you are saying that that happiness is never going to come from all the material thing that we are going to chase, because there's always going to be something that we're going to chase. And that's going to completely shift. And I think, they call it, they differentiate it is saying that pleasure and happiness, where happiness is the state of mind, while pleasure is something that you attach to
Okay.
something outside, and happiness is something that's within, right? Now, how can we tap into that happiness? Is there some understanding that needs to happen, or is there something that you'd like to share on how normal people, again I'm referring normal people because obviously I'm assuming that a lot of listeners who are listening to us, would not probably be on the journey to become sadhus and stuff, but how we can tap into that happiness within ourselves.
Vijay, it's so nice that every time you qualify, let's explain it to normal people. Well, if I was explaining it to sadhus like myself, I would have said, find happiness by knowing God.
uh,
But to boil it down to simple everyday life answers that we can all relate to. All of us have these two urges, which,
mm,
if we pursue, it will result in divine happiness. The first is we wish to do good and meaningful work.
mm,
We all want to see that our work is making a difference, maybe to one person in the world, maybe to a lot of people. I like to give this example of a woodcutter, a social researcher. He did an experiment and he came to this woodcutter and said, I'll give you double the salary will you work at my lumberjack farm. The woodcutter said, I'm interested in money. I will definitely work. So he said, okay, come on Monday. He reported to his new job. The new employer gave him an axe and said, you are going to hit this tree with the axe. Only thing is, you will not have the sharp edge of the iron head in front. You will hit with the round side. He
mm,
said, but the tree will never get cut.
mm,
So the researcher said, doesn't matter. You are getting your money. Why does it bother you? All right. He started off. Now, for a few days, he was doing it from 9 to 5. But on the fifth day, he came and threw the axe at the feet of the researcher and said, I resign.
mm,
The researcher said, I'm giving you twice the salary. Why don't you want to do this job? He said, it is no fun. I
mm.
need to see the chips flying, right? So,
Yeah,
similarly, you're putting in effort in your podcast. What gives you the satisfaction is when people get back to you and say what a difference it made to their lives.
absolutely.
That is the chips flying. So
Mm,
we all want to do the best we can. That is one thing. And the second, we wish to be the best that we can be. No matter how good we may be, this yearning still remains. I need to be a better father,
mm,
better brother, a better husband, a better wife, a better human being, a better engineer, a better doctor. So there's an auto script written in our soul that is pushing us forward, that is telling us you still have not become as you are destined to be. So when we strive to be the best we can and do the best we can, that is when we feel the best we can. And that is the way to be truly happy from within.
That's so beautifully explained. Thank you so much for that explanation. I loved, both of those things that you have shared there. So I'm going to switch a little bit of a gear here and talk about. You also talk about delayed gratification on your book, and in this world where everything is just a click away, and this is something that I often ask my other guests as well, but I haven't asked somebody who can give the spiritual perspective to this, to the delayed gratification, because all the things that we have with the at the tips of our fingers today, that's training our mind to have the instant gratification, right? It's training
Right,
our mind and telling us all the time that you can have whatever you want within minutes. Or maybe, you order today, you will get your product delivered tomorrow. Or, you order your food today, like it's going to be in front of you in half an hour. Or you just upload a picture and then you are going to get feedback within seconds in the form of likes and comments and shares and whatnot. Now, while we have this overwhelming amount of input that we are getting, which is training us to train our mind to have that instant gratification, and on the other side, for you to accomplish any meaningful thing in your life, something worthy celebrating in your life, it's you always have to delay the gratification, and you have to think from the long term, right? So
right.
how can one get amidst of all of this training that we are fed with, all these the age that we live in, and still develop the delayed gratification?
Yes, the Upanishads have explained it very beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
They say there are two kinds of gratification.
Mm-hmm.
One is named prayer and the other is named shreya.
Mm-hmm.
So, prayer gratification is that which seems like nectar in the present, but it turns into poison later on. So, when we want our third helping of ice cream, it definitely seems like sheer ambrosia. But when the cholesterol goes up and the waistline increases, then you realize how terrible it is. So that happiness, which is sweet in the present, but bitter later on, is prayer. And then there is the other kind of happiness, Shreya, which is like poison in the present, but it turns into nectar later on. So
Mm-hmm.
when you decide that I'm inspired by the talks I've been hearing on the Inspiring podcast, and I will now wake up at 5 in the morning to do my practice. It seems so terrible for the mind. It's like poison. But when the benefits come in future, it becomes like nectar. That is why there's a saying in Hindi,
Mm-hmm.
आमले का खाया और
Mm-hmm.
बड़ों का कहा बाद में पता चलता है. The amla is the Indian gooseberry.
Yeah.
It has the vitamin C of 12 oranges
Yeah.
and it's rich with antioxidants. So if you take that one amla every day, you are insulating yourself, building up your immunity.
Mm-hmm.
But the catch here is that the amla is so bitter to taste. The mother offers it to the child, and the child says, "This is awful, I don't want it." And the mother says, "Look, my child, the advice of the elders and the benefit of the amla you will realize later on." And hence the struggle happens. This struggle is intrinsic to human existence.
Mm-hmm.
We have got these two natures, the lower nature and the upper nature. The lower nature wants instant gratification,
Mm-hmm.
and the upper nature wants a meaningful life, wants self improvement and higher goals. What is necessary here is to develop the virtue of self discipline, of
Mm-hmm.
self control. The more we can develop our willpower or our self control, the more we are able to bring our life into focus. So, all the vices, all the defects in life, they are related to lack of self control,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is overeating or insincerity at work or lack of exercise, etc., etc. And that is why, if we realize this, we start practicing. Now, interestingly, willpower or self discipline is also like a muscle.
Hmm.
The more you exercise it, the better it will become. So when children come to me and say, Swamiji, how do I develop my focus in studies? My mind keeps on wandering. I say, you know what? Every time it wanders, you bring it back. Every
Hmm.
time it wanders, bring it back again. The more often you do it, just like the biceps and triceps are strengthened, you will strengthen your self discipline. From a spiritual perspective, you understand it like this: there is the mind and there is the intellect.
Hmm.
So the mind is like a little child which
Hmm.
wants gratification right now. It doesn't care whether it's good for me or it's not. And the intellect realizes that this is not in my interest. Now it is up to the intellect to develop control over the mind.
Hmm.
That mind is not going to come under control easily. But with effort, with practice, with knowledge and dedication, we can. That is why the Bhagavad Gita says, look, your mind can be your worst enemy, but it can be also your best friend.
Hmm.
If your mind is not controlled, it will work to your worst detriment.
Hmm.
But if you master the mind and make it your servant, it will become your best servant.
Wow, I think that's again very beautifully explained. I love the way you have explained the whole thing about instant gratification and the delayed gratification. So before I move to the another segment called Enlightening Round, I would like to ask you this one, one more question on accomplishing the goals. And you talk about affirmation and visualization. These are the modern terms, right? So from the ancient wisdom or the scriptures that you have had in the past, so, how can we take that knowledge of reading mantras every single morning, the way our grandfathers and people who lived before us used to do, and then use that for achieving our goals and dreams in the world today? Like how we can use that affirmation, and is there any particular technique that you want to share with people? What makes it more impactful?
Okay. The importance of self talk and affirmation comes in programming our subconscious. So we feel we are aware of our mind, but what we are aware of is only a fraction of the mind, the conscious mind. And 90% of the mind is our subconscious, of which we have no awareness, but it is there.
Hmm.
So, for example, somebody is fearful of closed spaces, he has claustrophobia.
Hmm.
A person was telling me that he went for MRI, and every time they would like to take his body into that chamber, he would faint unconscious. He would
Hmm.
start sweating. But this is the claustrophobia.
Hmm.
Now, how did it happen was like this. For example, when he was a 3-year-old child, he got stuck in an elevator for a few hours. That was a conscious experience that he was aware of at that time. Now, after a few months, the memory faded out from the consciousness, but it remained in the subconscious. So, the
Hmm.
moment that situation arises, the subconscious throws out the fear. Factually, 90% of our behavior throughout the day is coming from our subconscious impetus. We are
Hmm.
doing things out of our habits, out of our programming, out of our conditioning without even realizing it. And the same happens to our attitudes. Some people are habitually pessimistic. Some people are worrisome. Now, where did this come from? The subconscious has been programmed like that.
Hmm.
What is programming the subconscious? Our conscious inputs. If we repeatedly tell ourselves, I am good for nothing, I cannot achieve it, the subconscious will say the boss has told us that we are good for nothing.
Hmm.
And whenever a situation comes, it will create an attitude of pessimism. a defeatist attitude. So, what is important is that with the conscious mind, if we can program our subconscious with positivity, with affirmations. Now, modern self help coaches realize this aspect and they emphasize it to people as well, that think of abundance, think of graces, feel gratitude, tell yourself, speak to yourself positively. But in our ancient tradition, this was given the form of chanting of mantras and
Mm.
names of God.
Yeah.
So, for example, the saints and the scriptures said, with every breath, you chant the name of God, Radhe Sham, as you breathe in, as you breathe out. What is going to happen? Your subconscious will become divine.
Mm.
It will be filled with divine love. And when that becomes the state of your mind, your every work will start getting motivated with love. Your inner aspiration will be, I wish to love, I wish to serve. Your, the way you look at the world will change. The way you look at people will change. So that is why these ancients, they gave us the system of repeating mantras to ourselves as the most powerful way of programming the subconscious. But if you wish me to continue, you said that Swamiji, is there something that can make it even more effective?
Yeah.
Yes, there is. And this is visualization.
Mm.
Now, again, visualization is a technique that is being emphasized in modern times. There are two aspects to visualization. One is process visualization, and the other is outcome visualization. In visualization, we use images.
Mm.
The nature of the mind is such that it relates to images more than words and sounds.
Mm.
That is why the saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? When we learned anything, first time we identified a car, we've shown a picture of a car and we were told this is a car. So that is how our mind has learned to function. And images have a deeper impact upon our mind than mere statements and words. So in the sports arena, sports people, because they need peak performance, where a fraction of a second can make a difference between a gold medal and a silver medal. So, to achieve the peak performance, they utilize imagery. In other words, two kinds of things. First is process imagery, process visualization. Before doing the service in tennis, they
Mm.
visualize themselves doing it.
Mm.
Now, when they keep that image in their mind of the opposing court and the ball falling there and allow it to sink into the subconscious, then the subconscious gets into play and
Mm.
it starts controlling the thousands of physical and mental processes involved in the activity. So, the world's best golfer ever, Jack
Mm.
Nicklaus, he says, I never hit a shot without first visualizing the entire trajectory and it falling into the hole.
Mm.
So, this is the utilization of imagery. In
Mm.
fact, modern science has discovered that when we practice something physically or when we just imagine ourselves doing the same act,
Mm.
the the neural activity is exactly the same.
Wow.
That is why there's a saying in English that you swim in the summers, but you learn swimming in the winters.
Mm.
Now, again, I have dovetailed this in a spiritual way. And I've explained in my book, The Science of Mind Management, how to utilize imagery to achieve your supreme goal.
Mm.
So, if your goal is that I wish to develop love for the Supreme, I wish to meditate on
Mm.
that higher self,
Yeah.
And when people engage in meditation, they find, oh my God, this mind is so restless without end. But then a simple technique. So this is what I teach. It's called Rupadhyan Meditation. Bring a divine image in front of you
Mm,
of your worshipable form of the Lord or whatever you connect with, whether it's a symbol, a cross, the moon, or whatever.
mm,
The moment you have that divine image, your mind gets a basis to rest upon and a basis to love. So this is
mm,
the Roop Dhyan meditation. Practically, whenever I conduct a meditation class, before I start off, I ask, how many of you have tried meditation? And about 98% lift their hands.
mm.
Then I say, how many of you succeed in meditating? And then about 3-4% lift their hands. Say, okay, now we'll do meditation my way. It will be a
Mm,
guided meditation.
mm,
And I say it will be a 15-minute meditation. All of you close your eyes. And then
mhm,
I take them through a visualization process.
mm,
And then I ask at the end, okay, now how many of you succeeded? And usually I've never in the last 25, 30 years had less than 70% of the people saying they succeeded. So
wow.
this is utilizing visualization to program your subconscious in a
Wow.
spiritual manner.
Awesome. So you mentioned about that video. Is that available on the YouTube channel, which we can probably put link for our audience on the description? So if they want to try this one as well.
Definitely, we have quite a few meditation videos as well on
Yeah.
my YouTube channel.
Great. So I'll just put the link to this particular meditation that you're talking about, the Roop meditation. And maybe, the listeners who are listening to this want to try this out, even though we have done a special episode for the meditation a couple of weeks back. But yeah, so that would be great. Now, I want to jump into the next section called Enlightening Round. This is like a kind of a rapid fire kind of a thing. I would expect that, you would give shorter answer to the questions that I'm going to fire at you. Are you ready for this?
What is the time limit for my answer?
Uh, so I mean, there is no time limit, but
All right.
you can try to give the answers maybe a couple of sentence. Yeah.
Okay, this is the first time I'm doing a rapid fire, so I will try
Nothing to.
and fulfill the spirit of it.
Yeah. So I
Yes.
hope I'm not shaking Swamiji's peace here.
No, 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 no. I'm always up for a
I'm just
challenge.
yeah. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So what inspires you to do everything that you do?
It is my love for my spiritual teacher. He taught me, he trained me, and he empowered me on the path of service.
Hmm.
So I feel gratitude for all that he has given, and I feel it my duty, my opportunity, and my privilege to do all this because it will please him and thereby please the Supreme.
So Swamiji, which one daily habit do you believe has been game changer for you in your journey? If you have to pick one daily habit.
It is the practice of the presence of God,
Mm-hmm.
just perceiving God in the temple, but learning to realize his presence everywhere and with me at all times.
Mm,
That has helped change the consciousness.
beautiful. So, what would be the best piece of advice that you have received, maybe early in your life?
The best piece of advice, then I will speak from the point of view of a sadhu.
Mm-hmm.
The best piece of advice that I understood was that I am not the body, I
Mm-hmm.
am the soul.
Mm-hmm.
And that soul is a part of the Supreme Soul. So, just like the constitutional position of this hand as
Mm-hmm.
a part of the body is to serve the body, and in
Mm-hmm.
that it automatically receives what it needs.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, as a part of the Supreme, my constitutional position is to serve the Supreme. And it is in serving the Lord that I'll find the happiness and satisfaction that I'm looking
Wow, I just love that. That's just so beautifully explained. So you definitely must have made peace with anything that all your beliefs and stuff like that. But still, I would like to ask this: what was that one wrong belief you have held for the longest time in your life about yourself, if there are any? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe in instant change.
Mm-hmm.
So the moment I realize that something is wrong, You
Mm-hmm.
see, when people ask me that why did you take sannyas?
Mm,
So I said, the moment I understood that I am a servant of God and my job is to serve Him, I immediately took that action. So
mm,
I don't, at least in my conscious awareness, hold any wrong beliefs. But
mm.
I may be wrong. I must be humble enough to it.
Sure. So, what do you want to be remembered for?
I really don't wish to be remembered. I wish to do the best that I can. We all have our duties in this world, and I have had the privilege of receiving divine knowledge, and my duty is to spread it and distribute it to the maximum extent possible, because I truly and completely believe that this knowledge is tremendously auspicious for everyone. And my job is, how much can I distribute it? And to how many people can I reach this knowledge in the time that I have available?
It has been a great having conversation with you, Swamiji. I have one last question that I want to ask you. But before I ask you that question, I would like to acknowledge you for sharing your wisdom with the world. And also, I'd like to thank you so much for being on the show. And for the listeners who have been listening to us for almost past 1 hour, I highly encourage that you guys check Swamiji's new book, The Science of Mind Management, where he goes deep into scientific aspect of it. Also, he goes into the spiritual aspect of it, so that you get what the science is saying. Also, you get the spiritual perspective as well on managing your mind, taking control of your mind so that you can accomplish what you wish to accomplish in your life. I absolutely loved the read, Swamiji. And I'll put the link on the chat box for if any one of you would like to pick that book up. I highly recommend that. So, Swamiji, if people would like to get in touch with you or maybe learn more about your work, what would be the best possible way?
Vijay, I think they can connect online. First of all, they can visit our website, which is jkyog.org, and they will get further information from there, or else they can write to my team at desk of Swamiji at jkyog.org. That's desk of Swamiji at jkyog.org.
Great. So, here's the last question for you, Swamiji. Imagine that you are standing on a stadium, and this one is the largest
Now
stadium
you
that
are
has.
making me do Rupadhyan.
Yes, I am. So, yes. Imagine that you are on this, stage of a stadium, which is the largest stadium that has ever been built in the history of the world. And this stadium has got millions of people who are there, and you are on the stage, and people are very curious to learn and hear what you have to share. And you have been given only 1 minute of the time to share the most important lesson that you have learned in your life. What would be your message?
We need to understand three simple things. The first is, who am I? Understand you are not this body made of matter, you are the divine soul. The second thing you need to understand is that your soul is not separate from all of creation. It has an eternal relationship with the whole of creation and the Creator Himself. So understand that relationship of yours with the Supreme. And the third, how to develop that relationship by cultivating loving devotion within yourself. That is selfless, divine love. These three pieces of knowledge will automatically transform your life in a wonderful spiritual way.
This has been a great conversation, Swamiji. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Vijay. It was my pleasure speaking to you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Inspiring Talk podcast. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast from. I hope you learned something or got some inspiration. You can take a screenshot of this episode and post it on your Instagram story. When you do that, don't forget to tag me at @Bijay Speaks. You can access the show notes of this episode by visiting theinspiringtalk.com/102. Thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you in the next. Now, go out there and do something inspiring.